Hey, what you doing this summer? We are doing a free masterclass called Power Up Your Inner World because it's all about how your inner capacity is for understanding who you are, whose you are, and how to really operate from Father's kingdom. And this is the kickoff to quantum capacity. If you haven't heard of it before, we're looking at the inner structures. What are they built on? And are you ready to handle the big, amazing destiny that the Lord has for you? Start with a masterclass called Powering Up Your Inner World. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Spirit-Centered Business Podcast, where we blend the spiritual with the practical for supernatural results. Now, here is your host, Bralynn Newby.
Hey there, welcome back to Spirit-Centered Business. I'm here for part 2 with Sabrina Hammonds. And if you missed part 1, you definitely want to go get it. She tells her story. She gives us just some really juicy nuggets about how she got started and what God's doing in her life and in her family. And it's just a really good story. So do go over to spiritcenteredbusiness.com or wherever you're enjoying the podcast and pick up part 1 if you missed it. But welcome back, Sabrina. I'm so glad that we can continue the conversation.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I'm like, oh, I didn't want to end. But I do want to get more into how you serve people, how you're actually kind of like coach people to refine their message, which, you know, that's on my heart as well. My first book was all about your message. So yeah, just take it away. Like how do you want to start shifting into what you do with your business?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to share that. So as I said, I am with Kingdom Connections podcast and media agency. And the way that we get to serve is we serve established Christian women, entrepreneurs who have a message that they want to get in front of their people. And something that stands out, or I feel like is very unique to the way that we serve, is back in the very beginning, when I first launched the business, the Lord spoke to me about quality versus quantity. And so if you know anything about the podcasting, just world in general, quality is important, but numbers really is the game. I feel like when it comes to on whichever side that you're on, whether it's guesting or it's you're hosting, right? People are about the numbers. And so I didn't really understand what the Lord was saying when he said quality versus quantity, because what I was seeing in the industry when it comes to getting people on podcasts, what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about how many can you get me booked on? What's the number, right? I want to get booked on 100 this year, you know, and people are all about the numbers. Yeah. And so as you can imagine, it was really intimidating to hear the Lord say, I don't want you to focus on the numbers. I want you to focus on quality of connections. And I began to see that unfold in the beginning because he said, you're going to connect women strategically with people and platforms because there's going to be relationships that are going to be formed. There's going to be communities that are going to develop from these connections. So it's not just about taking someone's message and blasting it to everyone. This is about quality connections that are aligned for these women because they're not interested in the blasting of their message everywhere. They want relationships. They want alignment. They're looking for places where they can connect with other disruptors, with other culture shifters. And so, but I can tell you right now, it's been so tempting along the way to kind of shift to that quantity side of things and for that to be the focus, because honestly there were some people and there have been some potential clients that have come my way that it wasn't a right fit because they weren't aligned with how God has called me to serve. And I say that because a lot of times when we're building a business, there's other people in this similar industry and we can be tempted to get out of alignment with where God has called us to serve and how he's called us to serve. And I know that he continues to remind me that his plans and his ways are higher. But that we have access to the blueprints and strategies of heaven. And so it's like every time I have someone that comes to me and I can tell that God has sent this person, it's that reminder to stay where he's called me to stay. No matter what the industry says, no matter what the world's way says, even if they're still saying it's a numbers game, you shouldn't be doing this, right? Because I've heard the negative part, right? And I think sometimes we can listen to those things, and again, it can cause us to compromise in certain areas. And so I know that God has called me to be focused on quality, not quantity. And I know that there are those out there that are looking for that. And so that's why I continue to do it God's way and not the world's way. Because God continues to send me women who have just given everything and they've surrendered completely to what God has called them to do. And they have a message that is called to shift the culture, the atmosphere in their industry. I mean, we're not just talking about this is a message that brings hope and transformation, which it does, but we're talking about shifting the culture and doing what the word says on earth as it is in heaven. So they're bringing heavenly culture to earth through the message and the transformation that they bring. And it's on God's heart, right? This is his message that we're stewarding. And so I think when I'm reminded of that, it just brings me back to the reason that I do what I do and why we do what we do, called to be kingdom ambassadors. And it's not supposed to look the way that it looks right now, right? We're not supposed to look at things and just succumb to the culture. No. We're supposed to shift things, right? When we see things that are not aligned with what God has meant for us and for his people, that's an opportunity to step in and bring truth to the situation, not just to subscribe to the negative agenda that says it's getting worse and worse and worse. No, we have the answers. So we're called to bring solutions, right, to the problems of the world. And I feel like that's part of what I get to do, because the messages are bringing solutions to the problems of the world. And I don't know if I answered the question, but I feel like now I can just go on and on about that, because I'm super passionate about that.
Oh, that is so good. And it's one of the reasons why I'm like, oh, yes, I'm so glad that we connected and that I can get your message out there, because I mean, you're almost reading like my copy of on my website. I'm like, shift culture, build the kingdom, like leave a legacy. Those are the things that I'm after, and we do that through identity, which is the first part of identity, is knowing who God is.
Yes.
Because as we learn who he is, we get to learn who we are, because we're made in his image. So I love that you're talking about staying in your own lane. And I'm sure that my audience, if you've been with me a little minute, you've heard me say that, but I spent thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to retool myself when I first started my business. And I learned how to do all of the online marketing stuff and all of the SEO stuff and all of the, stuff that the gurus teach and all of that. And then God's like, but you're not going to do your business that way. So I'm like, okay, so exactly how am I going to do this? And he's like, all right, Abraham, just pick up all your stuff and I'll show you a land as you go. Okay. So yeah, if you look at my numbers, I don't have a lot of numbers. I was shocked when I passed 10,000 downloads on Spreaker, and I'm like, I had no idea. And you look and people are in the hundreds of thousands and millions and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I have angels out working for me who are bringing exactly the right people to hear the podcast on whatever platform they're supposed to be hearing it on at
Yeah.
whatever time they're supposed to hear it. And I just have to trust that God's got this, because if he needed to bring more people to see the podcast or more YouTube subscribers or more whatever, he would do it. And I just need to just
And I
keep bringing
think
quality like you.
no, that what you said, that's good though. We do our part, right? And God does
Mhm.
his part. And it's
Right.
not about working more and doing more to craft something or make something happen or manipulate things. It's what has God called us to do? That's our part. And then he does the rest. And I think it's so beautiful thing when you get to see God open doors for people and like in my line of work, get to connect people to maybe connections that are like dream connections for people. And it's not because I know everyone there is to know. God will lead me to a connection and he'll say, this is the door I want you to knock on. This is who I want you to reach out to. And sometimes it can be really intimidating at first because I do go and look at their numbers. I do go and look at who they are and, you know, how many subscribers that they have. Like, cause I need to get to know this person that I'm going to be reaching out to. And so sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, Lord, like, am I? But then he's like, no. Whose are you? I am the one that's opening the door. You're just the one that's going to outreach. But it's me that's opening these doors. And so you might have someone that they don't think that God can maybe open certain doors because they don't have the numbers, right? They don't have all of the subscribers or the followers, but it's like they know that God is saying, this is where I should go. But how do I get there? You just have to trust. You have to trust and let go of the world's way, because God does not operate in the confines of the physical, natural world. He operates in the supernatural.
Exactly. And did you know that social media is in the Bible? Proverbs 14:28. A king glories in the number of his loyal followers.
I don't think I've read that and thought that before. So I'll never read that the same way again.
Right? I bring that back to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I'm a king. I'm glorying in the number of my followers. Oh, yeah, it's so good. So you do both ends, right? You look for people to be guests and you look for good podcasts to put those guests on, right? You do both ends.
Yes, the Lord has said I am to be a divine connector. And so I get to connect the clients that we serve to the podcast and podcast hosts that are a good fit for them, for their message, their mission, and really carry their heart and their message to them, so that by the time they get to the host, that introduction, they already feel that connection because we've introduced them. And so, yeah, we get to make those strategic connections on their behalf. And then from there, we just get to watch what develops, because sometimes there's relationships that come from that. Sometimes there's collaborations that come from that. Sometimes it's let's build something together, which that's that multiplication effect that I know the Lord was talking to me about in the beginning. Like it's more than just one interview. It's about a strategic connection that's going to help multiply their message in so many different ways.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. Yeah. Yeah. So some of the nuts and bolts, then you started in 2020 and you really didn't know what you were doing. Did you have to like take any classes or learn anything? Or, I mean, how did that all work out? When God tells you something you have no grid for, what do you do? Right?
So I had a foundational business, if you will, like the foundational basic nuts and bolts of a business from a course that I did take in the summer of 2020. It was a course that showed you how to start a VA business, is basically what it was. So I had that part, but it was the podcasting and the outreach and booking things that I didn't know. I literally started with a Google search. said, where are people speaking? Like, where can you share your message? Honestly, that was how it started. And that's when I found podcast. And from there, I would just pray. I would literally just pray. And then I would find the contact information for these different hosts. And I get ready to do the email. And it was all just genuine outreach. There's no templates because I didn't know. I was just reaching out from a place of, hey, this is someone that I'm connected with. This is her message. And this is why I believe she needs to be on the podcast, or why I wanted to connect you with her. And then I would have to go in, of course, and research them. But again, that's why it was so genuine, because I know that people were mass pitching or using templates, to blast people everywhere. I just knew I'm passionate about this message. This person has a podcast and they're obviously passionate about this message too. So this just makes sense. And let me introduce her to this person. And so there was no templates. It was just me being open and vulnerable. And it was amazing at how many yeses that we got from someone that knew nothing about podcast pitching or how the process works. But it was just like one step at a time. I began to build a database. I began to figure out, okay, this is how we can track this. Somewhere along the way, I did hire someone to help me craft a better organization for what I was trying to do, because I was writing things down on pencil and paper. I was trying to organize it in an Excel spreadsheet. So some of those logistical things, I did have to reach out to somebody, because I was just like, this is getting so big. And I feel like there's somebody else that's a little more organized than I am that can maybe help me to kind of put some of this together. But I mean, literally begin to outreach, and God would just lead me to the right people. And so even to this day, I know that it's the Lord, because he knows these people. He knows the women that he's bringing to me. He knows their message inside and out. He knows where they're going. And then he also knows the best connections for them. And so I am still just relying on the Lord to guide and direct me. And when I'm tempted to kind of shift and let me just send out mass pitch, and I'm just being honest, like the more your business grows, there are those moments when I'm just like, Lord, wouldn't this be more efficient if, or he's just like, we don't operate that way. Like he's very quick to remind me, go back to the foundation, go back to the way we started and what the business is built upon. And I still want you to serve that way. And so I think it's just those moments that bring me back to, this is the way we operate, says the Lord. And I still want you to operate this way. And in fact, the bigger the business gets, the more time we need to spend together, which to me, when I started to think about that, it seemed counterproductive. But it's not. It's not. Because he has all the answers. He has the strategy. And we can do more in less time when we partner with him than we can on our own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. That's so good. So do you only work with female podcasters, or is it female guests or both? I know it's female guests, but is it podcasters as well?
So we don't limit to podcast hosts that are female. It seems to be the ones that we reach out to based on alignment with our clients, but we don't narrow it down to that. But the majority of our podcast database is Christian women podcast hosts that are in some way also serving women. And so it's a collective of women that I feel like God is bringing. But really it's just the nature of how the business has been built and who he sent my way. But I do believe that there's opportunity for expansion and for growth, because I have been approached by by men who have powerful messages that need to get out there. And so I'm leaning into the Lord and asking him for guidance and direction in what this looks like, because the way that I serve is just very relational. And I consider these women that I serve to be part of my family. I pray for them. I communicate with them regularly. I consider it to be just very intimate. And so I'm wondering, how does that translate to men? You know, when I'm only so close and personal with my husband, you know, how does that look if I'm serving clients in the same way? And perhaps it just doesn't look the same way. But that doesn't mean it's any less personal, but maybe the way that I go about it is a little different. And so I'm trusting that God is gonna lead me when that time is right.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I just guested on a podcast, and the entire podcast it's for men. But the guy who was hosting it, Dr. Bradford Carlton, amazing guy. And he said, you have something amazing to speak to the men about. I'm like, okay, I believe I do, you know, so let's do it. So that was fun, but it was a little unusual because you do operate a little bit different. You use language different, and you tell stories in a little different way when you know that you're speaking to a different audience than women. You know, women, I mean, obviously I am a woman, so I can do that. However, I came up in architecture and construction. I'm an architect and I work in managing construction projects. So I came up in a man's world. So I spoke the more of a masculine kind of a way. And I didn't switch over to, in fact, hanging out with women was very different for me. When I started my business in 2011-12 timeframe was during those times when I was training and trying to retool myself, you know, use some of the skills that I had, but switching over to women. So I totally understand how that dynamic is a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah. And how God is bringing all of your experiences, though, in order to reach who he's called you to reach, right? Because you have that background. So I think that's exactly. Really, yeah.
Yeah, I can speak about building the kingdom because I'm literally a builder. I mean, it's in my blood. I design things in my sleep, in my dreams. I'm designing it, you know. In fact, yeah, I don't want to get into it, but yeah, the Lord has me in as a designer and a builder to speak that building language because I'm bringing the kingdom. And, you know, some women are put off by a little bit more direct kind of a way, but I don't think a lot of women are. I think we're more accepting than we used to be. Like in the 90s and early 2000s, it was very very distinct profiles of how you speak and how you do it, but now it's a little bit more blended, for better or for worse. You know, I'm not gonna make a comment that way. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But your website is KC Podcast Agency. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it .com?
KCPodcastAgency.com. Yes.
Okay. All right. Casey, and I will definitely have it in the show notes, both for part 1 and part 2. So, what should people know if they think that they want to hire you to help them either guest or get guests? What should people know about that?
So really, when our clients come to us, they do have a solid foundation and understanding of their message, their audience, and their purpose. So that is very foundational. Now, I have done some coaching and work around crafting your topics, and sometimes the more you show up, the more those things just come out of you, and we craft those topics as we go. But the solid understanding of your message, your audience, and your purpose is very foundational and important before you get on a podcast. You really want to know what you're called to share, right? And who you're called to speak to. And so before you would come to me, you would know those things, and so that you're prepared to be a podcast guest. And then from there, it's really, again, seeking the Lord for the vision, the long-term vision for your message. Where is it supposed to go and what does that look like? And then finding the right podcast platforms. And so if you find yourself in a place where you feel like you've plateaued in your reach, I think, we steward the message online in the ways that we know how to do best. But then at some point, what I find is that you feel like you've just kind of hit a wall and you don't know if your message is landing, but there's more on the other side. That God has called you to speak to more, but you don't know how to get there. That's really where we come in that moment where you're like, I know God's got more. I know he's called me to reach more and he's calling me to a higher level. How do I get to that higher level? That's where we want to partner with you at that moment, because God does have more for you and he does have strategic connections and doors that he wants to open for you.
That's so good. So I was an actress. So I went on stages and then I was a speaker for years and years. So I kind of have that background to frame up my speech in a way that, tells the story and does the stuff. So do you help people to be able to do that? Or is that part of the stuff that they already have to have bringing to the table?
Well, we do work on pulling out those stories and connecting them, like not forgetting the parts of your stories that are connected to your content, because story plus content equals great impact, right? Your story is so much more valuable. And so we do, in the very beginning, take a deep dive into your message, but also the background of where you've come from and how that connects to the topics that God has called you to speak, so that as you have the speaking topics, you know exactly which parts of your story connects and what you can share that's relevant. And so we do some coaching around that, so that you can be purposeful and intentional about connecting the story to your content.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. And then, of course, the call to action is always important at the end there. Well, like how can people get more of you? And I'm going to ask you that in a little bit, but do you help your guests, the people who you're putting on, do you help them craft that call to action as well?
Yes. So that falls under purpose. What's the purpose for which you want to get on podcast? Is it simply for impact? Like you really have nothing else, but you just want to share your message. Well, that's going to be completely different versus someone who is specifically looking to maybe build their business and take on new clients. They're going to have a completely different call to action. They're going to want to look at, how do they want people to connect with you if you're wanting to gain clients? Is it to book a call with you? Is it through the free resource that you offer? Are you an author and you have a book that you're promoting? Do you want to send them directly to buy your book? Or maybe it's a free resource that gives a chapter of your book that they can read. And then once they read it, they're going to want to buy your book, right? And so those are some of the ideas and angles for your call to action. And it doesn't have to just be one specific thing that you use everywhere you go, because that wouldn't be a fit for every single audience. Right. So I always want to find out, what are all of the resources that you have? Let's list them out so that I can fit the resource and the call to action that's suitable for where you're going. So it's really not up to them to figure out what's best for this platform or these people. Let's look at all of it. And then I usually decide what's going to fit based on the research that we've done.
Oh, that's so good. Now, did you have any training to do any of that kind of stuff?
So I have worked, I did work for a short time with someone who did podcast pitching specifically.
Oh,
now,
okay, good.
She was not faith-based. And so a lot of the things that she was sharing, I kind of had to ask the Lord, what do I take away and what is for me and what is not? But what I learned kind of reinforced what I had been doing already. It was just, I was bringing in a faith element versus she was not. And so I did have some training and some coaching and mentoring in podcast pitching specifically for a while, but a lot of it has come from learning what not to do. And
isn't that the truth?
just from experiences and what's the best practice for reaching out. I've gotten some feedback along the way. Not everything has been great, so I've learned what not to do. And I've learned that it's not good to create a template and mass pitch. Now, I haven't done that as a practice, but I have taken and pieced some things together and sent them, and I've gotten feedback, this was not good and this is why. So just over the years, I've learned, what does the podcast host value? What do my clients value? How can I bring those things together so that to serve both at a higher level? And so that's really come from a lot of communicating, a lot of listening, and remembering that we're serving and not selling. I don't ever want to sell my client. I want to approach with the opportunity for them to serve, not sell. Nobody wants to be sold.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So I rarely, I'm just thinking and making sure that I'm not, that I'm accurate here. I rarely actually accept the pitches that get sent to me. I think people just see that there's a podcast that talks about Christian stuff, or not even Christian. They don't even pay attention that it's Christian, it's business. And so they pitch on or spirituality and stuff like that. So I really value your understanding what the podcaster wants as well. And so if podcasters who need guests want to work with you, what do they need to do?
So honestly, that looks like a partnership. There's not a fee that's involved. It's really a conversation, and then an understanding of what is their platform about, who are they, and what are they looking for. And if we have that understanding and we have clients that are a good fit, they welcome us to be able to send them. So it's an agreement, it's a partnership. They're saying, hey, I trust you to send me the right people. And then we're so grateful, right? Because the more partnerships that we can have, the better that we can serve both the platform and our clients, because we need those trusted relationships, honestly, because sometimes we have reached out to someone that looks like they're consistent. It looks like it's a good fit, but if we've not worked with them before, we don't know what the follow through is going to look like. And sometimes it's not what we thought it was going to be. So I absolutely love to partner with podcast hosts and platforms that we can work with, and we can send them quality guests and just help with that process, take that part and help them with it.
Okay. So it's just a matter of getting a hold of you and having a conversation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. So podcasters, KC, podcastagency.com if you want to get a hold of Sabrina. Is there I should go look at the website. Is there like a contact?
Yes, so that you can schedule a call. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you can even, from there, you can even find me online on social media and just reach out directly on LinkedIn or on Facebook, either way. So yeah, I would love to just have a conversation and go from there.
Awesome. So you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that where you get most of the connections, on LinkedIn?
So this year in particular, that's really the platform the Lord has led me to. And I've come to realize it's because I believe that is where more of my people are, as far as those that I can help and serve, because they're at that point where LinkedIn really is a more professional platform. Yeah. And the Lord has called me to serve the established entrepreneur. So that's, I am finding that is a better place, but I'm also still on Facebook. And I feel like Facebook is more relational. It's more of a place where I can interact just genuinely and meet people and make those connections. But then LinkedIn is also a great resource as well.
Very good. Good to know. Yeah, I'm just not a social media person. So my team is amazing though. And so they put stuff all over the place, and they're telling me about all of the stuff that I posted. Like, okay. So I will tell them, hey, we need to hit LinkedIn a little bit more.
Yeah.
They're good. Well, this has been a great 2 parts. I loved part 1 and this part, so it's so good. Is there any last words of wisdom that you want to share with the audience?
So what comes to mind? Wow. If you're in that place of, as I mentioned, where you feel like there is more for you, that God does have more for you, I would encourage you to seek the Lord and to ask Him for that next step. Because sometimes what happens is we can think that God is asking me to take on something else. And maybe He is. Maybe it's a reprioritizing. But it could be that God is asking you to partner with someone, that the increase, the expansion, the growth is in collaboration with someone else. And so I would just encourage you to ask the Lord, if that's where you feel like you're at and there's more, but maybe you don't feel like you're the more, it could be in partnership. It could be in collaboration, because God is still a God of relationships and connecting people and bringing us together so that we as the body can advance the kingdom together.
Oh, that's beautiful. Love it. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching the show, Spirit Centered Business, wherever you're enjoying it, on whatever platform. I appreciate your likes and your subscribes and hitting the notification bell if you're over on YouTube. I appreciate that. And 5-star reviews on Spotify and Apple. Love that. And share it out, because we're beating algorithms, and we need to get this message out there to as many people as possible. We just need to keep hitting the airwaves with the frequency of heaven. So you as an audience member can help us do that. And we pray for you, and we so bless you. All right. Until next time, stay Spirit Centered. Peace out.
Hey there, SCB peeps. I want to give a huge shout out and deep appreciation and thanks to Candace Benton. She has become a super sponsor for the Spirit Centered Business Show. So I would appreciate you helping me in sending blessings and abundance back to her. Thank you so much, Candace, and you are well loved.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Centered Business with Bralynn Newby. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The next stage of doing business by being spirit-centered is coming together in collaboration, working with spiritual principles, and knowing our destiny. Join our tribe at spiritcenteredbusiness.com, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast. Peace out.